Other old business. Is there anything else?
Are you going to mention the letter about the audit from Baltimore? If not, may I bring it up?
Sure.
I just think it's very important we got this letter that you look at in the back of your folders from the Board of Elections of Baltimore County supporting our efforts to get MVA to do things slightly differently. And I just think it's important that they're supporting us and want to know what they can do to help. Let's keep it in mind that if along the way we need to make a state effort, and even in June we might want to give a report on what we're doing. Don't have a heart attack, Margaret. That
I'm
you
always
would just
in trouble with the state board.
well, just keep in mind we might want to have Mary Ann give a report, Jim, or whatever's happening then, give a report on the fact that we're doing this audit and what we've come, and a summary of it. A summary of what's happened so far and where we are.
You know, you raised something that's interesting here, because when we were at the state board meeting, if you recall, one of the things that was asked of the board members, the state board members, asked the staff of the Board of Elections to reach out to the other counties and see what issues they might have in this regard. Could we find out about that, Margaret?
Sure. But we need to keep in mind the June meeting that we might well want to do a report.
Okay, thank you for pointing that out. Now we have all the reports from the gubernatorial election.
Okay, what we're going to do, since we did provide the reports earlier, I'm just going to have individuals go over the highlights, starting with voter registration. Lolita, would you come up here real quick? And Bobby, you'll be on deck, so if you could come over here. In your packet, you will, at some point, you receive this, and it talks about voter registration. Go ahead, Lolita.
Okay. As of December 31st, 2014, there were a total of 671,095 registered active and inactive voters. The number of transactions that we processed in 2014 would be 365,317. Provisionals for the primary, we processed 2,460. For the general, 6,553. 16 to 18-year-olds that registered last year, we had 4,681. Our list maintenance activities included return mail, Eric, death cancellation, criminal conviction, cancellation of inactive voters after federal elections, jury commission notification, merge records, national change of address. We had municipal elections, 15 municipal elections last year, and the call center was in effect. It was activated for 21 days prior to the election.
Are there any questions?
What is your interaction with MVA? Anything at all that we get here, or is it really just with the state in terms of?
It's basically with the state. What would happen, like if we had a question about an application that came through, we would have to go through the help desk. And the help desk is kind of the person that's in between us and the state. So we don't go directly to the states with any of our questions.
So when MVA does their activity, and people get registered, or they change their registration or whatever, that information is then going to the state.
Correct.
And then it comes from the state to us. That's okay. And so you implement then whatever you get from the state.
Correct. They will notify us that there are applications to be processed. They're usually in batches of 25. We get them every day of the year, including Saturdays and Sundays and holidays.
Really? You wonder who's there doing it, right? And then, of course, you usually, your staff get the inquiries from when people are finding things have gone awry or it's not what they thought, and then you work with the state at that point to try and remedy.
You still go through the help desk, but I do have some contacts, so in some cases I would go directly to the state.
Okay, but the help desk is that part of the state?
Yes.
Yeah, it's there.
State Board of Elections.
Okay, but you don't interact directly with MVA on things. Okay,
I do.
you do. And
So, let's say she runs into a wall, then I will contact the MVA representative and the supervisor of voter registration and say, we have this issue, John Smith registered to vote on this day at the MVA, this is his license number, and we start doing trace. to
Margaret,
see
are
what
they
happens.
cooperative and
They're always
timely?
professional, and yeah, I mean, keeping in mind that there are literally tens of thousands of records being processed, and they have to track it down, and they have to talk to the staff wherever that transaction occurred.
I have a question for you. I know the total were close to 5,000 calls between the primary and the general election. Do you have a sense how many of those calls you guys used the language line, or how many of those calls you needed bilingual services for?
I don't have access to that right now, but I know that we did track, and the percent was very low.
Okay, if you could get those numbers for next time, that would be...
Communications will be next month, their
Okay.
report, and that'll be covered.
If you could,
at that
yeah,
point.
if you could put that in there, that'd be great. Thank you.
yeah, David.
Related to that, for the call center, it says prior to the election, the call center is established to handle incoming call volumes. What time frame are we talking about for this chart? When we say primary election and general election, how many? Is that when it says the number of days? Is that the number of days before the election that we're counting? So what happens if it's 30 days before the primary election? Who answers the phone?
The calls are answered out from the front. Registration, we answer calls all the time, so it just gets transferred.
So why are we only counting? Why are we only measuring the number of calls that come within 24 days of the primary and not just the 30 or all the calls we get?
Well, that's just a measure of the call center. of how
The
many-
topic was the call center, not, that voter registration conducts the call center, or supervises the call center. We can certainly find out. Again, this is part of the communication package. I will find out how many calls are coming in monthly.
Yeah, I was going to say, do we track the calls the same way as the call center tracks them that come outside of these time frames? So if somebody calls today, is it tracked the same way as if they called a week before the election?
This year, no, we're not tracking how many phone calls we're getting on a daily basis. During an election year, we do begin the process of tracking it, and I will have to get back to you as to what those numbers are for 2014.
I would think, this is just a statement, I would think that especially at a time when we're talking about the importance of outreach, that it would be good for us to have data on all the calls and emails, for that matter, that we receive and the amount of information we're giving out in order to make the case that we need to, because obviously an important form of outreach is answering those calls. And not just the 30 days before the election would be, I'm trying to remember when the voter registration deadline is.
Yeah, it's
Close to it,
21
right?
Yeah.
days prior to the election.
Right. So basically, we could be getting a lot of calls or very few calls from people who are interested in knowing when the voter registration deadline is, and it wouldn't be recorded as part of this undertaking. If it's 21 days before the election, we're only measuring calls from 24 days before the election. We don't have any idea as to what's happening before that, and I would think that would be important for us to know. One other question about this report. I have fond memories of the high school voter registration drive, both from when I was in high school and from since then. I've been involved with it in several different decades. But it says here that it's held during Student Leadership Week and the same week as the election of the student member to the Board of Education, but then it says that in 2014 it was held from April 2nd through 30th, which sounds like 4 weeks, not just one.
They have the drive for 4 weeks. The small election is that last week, and that's when most of the schools actually do their push.
So
But
drive,
those registrations
so they
are
could,
not.
so they can do it at any point during that month,
Correct.
but most of them do it during that last week. And is it being done the same way in 2015?
Yes.
So it's also the month of April, but the last week of April is kind of when most of the activity.
Correct. The election's on the 29th.
And as I understand it, there's been a very small number of non-public schools that have participated traditionally, and I wonder if there's anything that we're doing to try to improve that.
Well, we reach out to them, and then it's up to them whether or not, they can fit it into their curriculum or not. We have 2 responses back this year so far, plus in other efforts, we have 3 additional schools that will be doing voter registration drives during the course of the
What
year.
kind of outreach do we do?
When they go into the schools for the election judge recruitment, they also register people at that time.
So if we want to, so if our staff goes to like a non-public school to tell them about the voter registration drive, we're recruiting judges like now?
Okay, Roberto, you want to
So we
stand
done
up
for
here?
Future Vote. We go
Right.
to the public schools and then we reach out to homeschools and private parochial schools. So we have gone to Prep, Stone Ridge, Holy Cross, Bullis, Good Counsel, at the top. And then we're right now, and I'll touch upon that when I do my Future Vote summary.
Okay.
But we are reaching out to them, and we do have individuals confirmed at those locations to help us with election judge recruitment of 17-year-olds.
And are all the public high schools participating in the
Yes,
voter registration
so
drive?
in May we're doing, after April, we're doing what we call a soft launch for the end of May, before the students leave for the summer. Because we recruit 11th graders, because then we'll train them.
Right.
Because then they'll be seniors for
Right.
the next
That's
election
for the
cycle.
that's for the judges. For the voter registration,
They're invited.
Yeah,
they're invited, but how many of the public high schools are participating?
I don't have an answer for that. I have been reaching out to the coordinator. She's supposed to get back to me tomorrow.
She's
with a
new,
number.
isn't she?
She's
Because,
new.
Karen's
But that's that's for this year. How about for last year?
Same thing, Karen. That's what Karen does. She reaches out to the schools, the actual schools. She contacts the principal, and she coordinates it with the person that they have appointed, and then they will select 2 or 3 students who will come to training, and then they're the ones who actually hold the drive.
Right, but do we know how many of the public high schools participated in 2014?
It was a very small number
Of the public?
of the public.
Really?
But there were also, you have to kind of really realize too, that there were other things going on. During that time, that's when they're doing their testing. And whether or not that was important or not, we go in and we train and offer the training to each of the schools. And if they send somebody, they do, and if they don't, then...
So why are we doing our drive while they're doing
Yeah,
testing?
should we rethink
That's
the
something-
timing?
That's something that is established by the school system. They've already established that. And I think that last year was one of the first years that there was the conflict in the
to
timing.
Yeah.
Dr. Navarro.
Or
But
or
you
to
are
learn
holding the
hours?
drive for the whole month. They're not holding the
Right,
testing
but the
for
testing
whole
goes
month.
on for a good portion of
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
of that month. I mean, this is the first I've heard of it. I can tell you, I'll speak for myself, but I'm guessing my colleagues would feel similarly. I would be happy to go out and help beat the bushes to encourage schools to participate in this program. And also would be happy to discuss it with the superintendent of schools, with the Board of Education, et cetera. And I'm very surprised. I'd like to know as soon as we can, not at the next meeting, but much sooner, this week, how many schools participated last time, and to the extent we know it, how many we expect to participate this time, because if we registered 4,000 voters in 2014, and that's only a small number of schools,
Yeah.
then that means there's a lot more out there.
But you have to also remember too, a lot more is going on than just the high school drive. This is only one of, you may have students that have already registered at MVA, they may have done it through other events, they may have done it years earlier. So,
But believe me,
the number.
I'm very familiar with that. I have one who registered through the drive and one who didn't. And I won't bore you with the story, but I'm sure you've heard about it. But I would say that the goal of this drive should still be to be active in every high school in Montgomery County, public and private, and not to do it at a time that is, that is counterproductive. I mean, because this is a major effort towards young voters or potential voters. That we wouldn't want it to be undermined. Yes, every school has lots of things going on, no question. But I don't think we want to undermine it by doing it at a time that is, that is not convenient for students to be paying attention.
What we've done in the past was we've done the tier from the high down. I mean, I've at least spoken to Dr. Weiss and Dr. Starr, and gone down to the former faith liaison to kind of executive legatus on the community partnership, Reverend, his name's slipping.
Oh, yeah, yes.
Tall. Anyway,
I
so,
forgot.
and by the time it goes down to the principals, they'll pass it to the assistant principal. Then the assistant principal passes it to the guidance counselor, and the guidance counselor. So by the time it gets to someone who has an interest, it just goes by the wayside. But this time what we've done is through future vote.
That sounds like a lack of interest by the leadership.
Well, yeah. So we've done from the top down. So this is what we're doing with future vote. We identify within our records of the students who were very active, who do the outreach, who do the training, who do election day, who do early voting. I contact them personally and say, listen, this is one of the efforts we want to really kind of, grow. And so I have a list of individuals, right now it's about 30, from different high schools. I don't have them all, and that's the reason we're doing a soft launch.
Right.
Because the ones who are interested are seniors, but so preoccupied with what's going on after they graduate in May. So what we're doing is working from the bottom up, and the student will be charged to, they know their environment, and so they will set a date and time on the calendar. They work with the staff, they'll work with their counselors and the world history teacher and the different faculty to pick the ideal 2-day period in May and or beginning of June. We're working with Leslie's team to do posters for election judge. So the student will say, let's say they'll have it some random day, May 21st and 22nd in the quad, because every school has a specific name of a location during the lunch hour. And it's very specific to the culture of that school as opposed to do a blanket. So we're working on that right now. The goal is to really have a good turnout for the presidential of 17-year-olds. So if that works, we're going to capture the names of the staff individual in those local high schools and parochial schools, so that way we could kind of work with them down the line, because I want to incorporate them also into outreach for the equipment itself.
Why are we doing outreach for judges separately from registration to vote?
I think one of the things I want to say is, the Future Vote program is working with the polling place, but every time we go out, we have voter registration. I mean, it's all going on simultaneously. Anytime we register anybody to vote, we're certainly going to ask somebody if they want to become a judge.
Okay, but it sounds like the high school voter registration drive is in April, and the drive to get high school students to serve as either future vote or judges is in May or June.
Yeah, but it's also voter registration as well. Yeah, anytime we go out, it encompasses everything. We go by mail, voter registration. We're close to the cycle of early voting. We drop the leaflets listing the locations. We do the voting in Maryland brochure. That's that color brochure. I mean, they go out with a lot of materials, and the students are trained in all aspects of election day expectations. So she's doing the drive with the school system. That's one portion, one effort. But when we do the outreach and or future vote, or if we go to the nursing homes, it's all considered outreach. They're all prepackaged with the information that goes out. So this is just kind of piggybacking on what they're doing for the school system, but also look at the mechanism to improve how we work with the school itself at the individual level, not the school level. Because we've done this school-wide, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's just, like I said, the leadership is just dropped by the wayside. But if you do it from the bottom up, you see more participation at the school level, not only faculty, but also students and families.
If it's driven by the students, we have a greater participation.
And you get the SSL credits, and so
And
you really get a buy-in.
And when we do our drive too, we're also recruiting for judges and also informing them too.
Sure.
So that they can, when they're doing their drives in the schools, can relay that information.
Well, if you could get me the data on how many schools had participated,
Okay.
that would be great. Thank you.
I have one last quick question. How many of those calls were referrals from the 311?
You would have to get that from Margie next month.
Oh, okay. Okay. And if they are part of that number, and if they're not, how many were they? Thank you.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
If I may,
Absentee?
Before you move on to absentee, I just want
Absentee, get up
to, I
there.
just want to make a few comments on that. Actually, I'll just make one, that discussion about the evolution of the high school program. I do just want to note that the high school program is approximately as old as I am. And the environment that they're working in for that program now is obviously very different. And then we do now have the ability for individuals at 16 years old to register younger. We do now have the motor vehicle registration. We have a number of additional opportunities and stakeholders who are out there striving to register people to vote. So in some ways, our efforts, Lolita's efforts, Silberto's efforts, our election judge recruiters' efforts to reach these high school age individuals, in some ways we actually have more competition from other groups that are out there trying to reach the students as well. And so I actually think that Lolita and Gilberto have really been working, I think, to try to really think through some of the changes in this. And as we have a new relationship with the school system, I note that David, you in particular, had just mentioned wanting to reach out to the schools and sort of talk about the future of the program. That's certainly consistent, I think, with a lot of what has been going on in the discussion of the program. I also do want to note the communications report will be next month, but we have mentioned at a previous meeting that we have instituted some new and much richer call tracking than we have done before. And so we will be working to expand the call tracking that we have as we move forward with the 2016 election. And I also want to note the statistics that Lolita rattled off at the beginning of her report. She mentioned that we had 365,317 voter register document processing transactions. I just want to point out that works out to an average of 36,531 transactions per staff member. Our voter registration staff, including the temporary staff, have a more than 36,000 member caseload effectively when you look at the transactions that they're doing. And now some of these are very routine, but many of them do, and unpredictably in many cases, involve having to do a fair amount of follow-up and contacting voters directly, multiple mailings. There's really a lot of work that our voter registration staff do that doesn't always go noted. And so after, now that they've given their report to you, I think it's just a good opportunity to point out to you how much work goes on behind the scenes on these 360-some thousand transactions every year.
Okay, absentee.
The absentee department encountered fewer problems in administering the 2014 general election than the last several elections. However, voter confusion about the process continued to be an issue. Outsourcing of mailing by the state continued to challenge the efficient service to voters in Montgomery County in that initially mail that is not processed daily and errors by the state contractor have continued to occur. Summary, for the 2014 gubernatorial general election, the volume of ballots handled by the absentee voting staff was as follows. Applications for an absentee ballot, 17,378. Absentee ballots sent, 17,378. Return voted ballots, 13,702. Total accepted by the board, 13,500. Rejected by the board, 2,006. I'm sorry, I lied, 206.
Why does that number not add up?
It doesn't add up because remember, after the election you get them, they continue to come in, and it's not the number that was recorded.
After the deadline, you mean?
Yeah, they come in after the deadline. And present
So you're
one
saying
to
that we
the board.
rejected some that are not counted as returned because they were returned late?
No,
Right,
they're
after the
returned,
canvass.
but it's after the canvass.
After the canvass.
So the returned ballots
Or 1370?
include, the 13,702 includes the ballots that came after the canvass or doesn't?
It does not. This
But
is-
the 206 does or
Yes,
doesn't?
because when we ran the numbers afterwards, these numbers came in.
Oh, I
just-
see. Oh, I'm sorry.
At the end.
I'm here to answer my question. Thank you.
Challenges. Montgomery County Board of Elections processes 25% of the absentee ballot requests and canvasses the highest volume of absentee ballots in the state of Maryland. 1, online application. The language and the presentation is confusing because it appears to a voter that it's a voter registration application. 2, confusing language. Delivery system language is confusing. 3, absentee ballot is delivered. Voter mails absentee ballot, then appears at the early voting center or a polling place to vote. 4, State Board of Elections, vendor management by the State Board and delivery of absentee ballots. And 5, delivery of printed ballot, election calendar, and legal requirements conflict when printing schedule for timely delivery of ballots to travelers and nursing home program. 6, canvas technology is outdated for the size of the county to scan the ballots that we have. Okay. Any questions?
Good observations
Yeah,
there.
they are good
I mean,
If you look at our report, we've made recommendations as to what we think should happen,
yeah.
both legislatively and proactively on our part.
Amen to what you said about requesting the absentee ballot online, which I did. It was very confusing.
Yes, it is.
You know.
People believe that they're registering even though they're just
And where is the fix for that, Bobby?
State.
the state.
State.
State level.
Everything goes to state.
And what have we done to raise that? Or
Well, the board has raised it. I know that Kevin has raised it directly with Nikki, and we certainly, once this is completed, we can certainly send this off to the state board. But you met
Actually-
with, what's, Ann Charles?
Ann is coming this week.
Oh, okay.
It was postponed because of the snow.
Okay.
The state is coming to see how we process applications
oh,
and our process because we're the most efficient and best records in the state, they said.
Well,
So-
but we also will be discussing.
is this the kind of thing that will come up for discussion in Ocean City?
I was going to ask that very question. It seems to me there's a platform there for some of these things. Aren't you on the board?
No.
Are you telling me the truth, or you just want to get out of this question? It seems to me that there's a role for the board members to bring up some of these burning questions
Well, I
that the
can
state
tell
doesn't
you
appear
that I know
to
that
be taking
Nikki
care
Trella
of.
reads our board minutes.
What?
I know that Nikki Trella, the deputy director, reads our minutes because she will contact me and tell me if she thought I'd gone astray in what I said. So,
Really?
yes, really.
they do.
We're waiting for them to contact us and tell us we went astray.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Only once.
I know they're paying attention to everything we write in these reports.
Well, it just seems to me, I know, having been to those meetings over the past years, and we never feel like we can get engaged, and they don't talk about serious kinds of things where
Wouldn't it be
we
interesting?
can affect some change. And hearing like this report, I could see a breakout session on the whole issue of the absentee ballots, and they love to talk about best practices and lessons learned and all of that. And
Didn't you say they were coming up with the schedule?
Yes.
Desperately
Okay.
trying for
And
it.
so if the Montgomery County Board of Elections has any particular breakout sessions you would like to see, we have one more bite at the apple to add.
Okay, what comes to my mind is we've had 3 or 4 questions today on MVA, on this kind of thing, that it seems to me all of them could be addressed statewide to a great positive effect. And why don't we give whomever the powers that be some of these questions and have a ask for a breakout session on them?
What are you going to call it?
breakout sessions on.
Well, no,
some of it is-
what are they going to address on absentee ballots? And I mean, of course, we'd all like to beat up on the state for rumback, right? Are they using them again?
No, actually, I think they're going to let that out for bid. But I think one of the issues is what is the language that is used on a lot of these online processes. It is not. No one can go to absentee online requests, and you go directly to the voter registration screen. It's not an intuitive process to understand why
And
you're
there's no
filling
introduction
out
that says this is required to update your information.
Well, not only that, they ask you where you want your voter registration card sent.
Right.
And obviously, if you're applying for an absentee ballot, there shouldn't be a need for a voter registration card. You already have one.
Right.
That's correct, except for a UOCAVA voter
Right.
who is registering for the first time when they send in their application. That's a dual application.
But there are other examples that were given today with regards to the MPA language that is on the online screens. And one of the things that I thought that Allison did really well with the sample ballot was to take whatever designs we come up with and run it through a process that was designed for democracy, so that it's a simpler, more understood, cleaner understood process that oh, okay, I go to here and this is the next step and this is the next step.
Well, and another thing that we pointed out too in this report was now voters go online if they have a driver's license and they can register for an absentee ballot at any time. I ran a report this morning before I came here. For the general election, we have 133 requests, and for the primary, 125 requests, of which more than 50% are web delivery. So the twofold problem is people who are applying now because they went to college or went to the MVA and registered will not remember most likely that they registered, and they will become provisional voters because they will turn up at the polling place.
We will mail them an absentee
Right.
ballot, and because we mail them an absentee ballot, they will not be able to vote on the new ballot marking device, and they will become a provisional voter.
Right.
One of those 20,000 that will be processing for the general election in 2016.
Can we include something with their absentee ballot that tells them?
Our proposal is to send a reminder
Right.
postcard to them and say,
You're registered for an absentee ballot.
Yeah.
Do you
Are
really
sure?
want it?
if they're still at the same address.
Right.
Well, I think moving forward here, certainly put this on a list to bring forward for the meeting. I think it would be very beneficial to have a breakout session on the whole
The
issue.
other thing is these ballots will have to be duplicated, the ones that more than 50% that are web
Right. The
delivery.
web delivery.
And
Yes.
how that delays the canvas.
Well, yeah,
Big issues.
and we know we're going to have probably huge numbers in this election, in 2016.
elections.
So,
Both
in both, yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, David.
Does our website now make clear that you can vote here by absentee?
I would have to look. I haven't looked recently.
No, I can
I
answer
don't-
that question
I don't-
for you. No, it
I
does
don't think
not.
it
And
does.
one of the things that, what we're trying to do is to, I've assigned a staff person to work on the graphics so that, it's something we started for this presentation that I made the other day for the League of Women Voters Committee. But what we want to do is show you can vote by mail, you can have this online delivery, you can come here, there'll be early voting, there'll be election day, and then there'll be a UOCAVA. And it's, again, moving into this concept of the design for democracy. Very simple words, graphics to help an individual understand what their options are. So we're working on that, and we're integrating this new voting system into those graphics.
So we're going to be including voting here as an option,
Yes.
which I know we had some question in the last election where.
A staff person made an error,
Yes.
yes.
So now we're going to be telling everybody
Yes,
this is among the options to come
yes.
here. Great, thank you.
Because there seems to be some confusion. And just that same meeting, somebody said to me, well, nobody wants anybody to vote absentee. And I was like, this is Montgomery County. Most of the state, people are voting absentee are in this county. So, yeah, there's a lot, we constantly run into these myths or urban legends, that we don't, you don't count absentee ballots. You don't count provisional ballots. That's not true. I have to tell people repeatedly, yes, every ballot is counted. If you are a legitimate voter, everything is timely. My board is sitting here for 2 weeks after the election, tabulating votes. Because somebody's out there saying we don't.
It sounds like something for our public relations to be thinking about getting better coverage for the canvas, even though it's a little bit like watching paint dry. But at least to let people know that the counting is going on, because I can tell you that there's lots of very educated people who, if I tell them what I'm doing in those 2 weeks, they're very surprised. Oh, the election's still going on?
Yeah.
Well, and it adds to the confusion in terms of individuals saying, well, why are you even counting absentee ballots? Because they declared the winner. I had the guy tell me this just the other day. They declared Larry Hogan the winner at 11 o'clock. Why are you counting any more ballots?
Why are you counting any more ballots?
I don't know what the media's doing, but I am telling you we're still counting ballots. So.
For days. The league would like to say something here.
Just a clarification, the meeting was our civic outreach empowerment committee. So it was not league members that were raising those questions.
I'm sorry.
It was the people that we are trying to reach also to increase voter turnout. And there were 30 to 35 that have been crossover between the first 2 meetings, and there's at least a third one planned.
Right.
And we do include that absentee ballots are all counted in our voter's guide. That's part of what we also mentioned.
Great.
Great. Thank you, Bobby.
IT?
Absentee caseworkers are to be commended too. Well, I'm commending people at the close of their reports. The gymnastics that they go through to try to make sure that they get balance to everybody they possibly can and handle reissues it's really quite something to see the above and beyond that they do.
They are the mistresses of email. All right.
Hi.
Jenny.
Just at the start of this election, we reviewed and retrained our temporary staff. We implemented some controls and checks and procedures, revamped some of the processes, and as a result of that, we prepared 2,762 voting units, along with the integrity reports that go along with those voting units. And on the integrity reports, because of our process changes, we achieved a 99.82% accuracy rate. We prepared 871 poll books and 871 integrity reports, and we had a 99.5% accuracy rate. Because we reviewed, we changed the procedures. We had, we were able to finish the logic and accuracy of the voting units prior to the defined deadline. We were done like a couple days before we were supposed to be. Everything done. And when we were doing the poll books after early voting, we started that Friday night. We got a call from the state that the file was bad. They gave us the wrong data. We had to restart, but we still finished earlier than what we did for the primary because we revamped everything. So all in all, it turned out to be a very good election for us. Okay.
Well, we certainly didn't have any of the problems that we saw in the primary with the poll books and all, and I'm sure everybody was on their toes. But, I can't let you leave the table without talking about, the timing and the results. And I still, don't understand why we aren't having more precincts modem in. I mean, some of it I gather is a training issue where people, they make those 3 tries when everybody else is making the 3 tries. They get busy signals or whatever, and then they, throw up their hands and, decide they're going to, spend a couple hours driving it in. And I think some of this is not in your area, but rather in what's taking place at the in the precincts. But from the standpoint of your end of it and the IT, how do you think it functioned on election night? Were you getting? I know in the primary we had some problems with the system crashing a few times and that. Is that still an issue?
We didn't have any crashes, but as we kept loading, it was getting slower. Just the cards were taking just a little longer than what in the beginning, you don't have that much data on the TSXs, so it's going loading real fast. But as you get further into the process, because you're constantly loading cards on those same machines, you can't clean the memory because it takes too long. So it does get a little slower.
Is there some sort of upgrade that we could get, or
well,
we won't have
for
those.
Beginners, we're not going to have the same equipment.
so we won't have
Well,
that?
keep in mind, we're going from 2,800 plus
Right.
GS units down to maybe 600 of these,
Yeah, remember
scattered across
for the
228 locations. And so the question is, and that's being debated at much higher levels than us, the investment of the wireless transmission, and they're trying to determine who the vendor is going to be.
Well, I mean, that's the biggest question, is how do we get the information from the precinct to here? That's still going to be an issue, right?
Well, yes, it is. The question is, will it be some type of transmission utilizing, an electronic transmission, or are we going to just, whenever the last voter is voted, we grab the PC memory, or it's not a PC memory card, it's a flash drive, and
Right.
throw it in the hands of two chief judges, or not chief judges, a Democrat and Republican, and they just come here. There's a lot of technical pieces that are being reviewed because of the change in the technology.
The question, they can't just take flash drive out of here and stick it in something else and send it to you all?
Yes, they could.
That's what
but-
they're talking on this wireless.
Good,
Well,
But who's supposed to pay for that?
And they
that's
can't do
that's
it
another
in all the
part of the
places.
question that's being answered.
It's money.
Now, it's my understanding that there is some money for wireless, but the thing is, we have to find a vendor. Is it, I don't want to name the names of the big companies, but that's one of the things, and it has to be secure, has to transmit safely, so nobody can intercept anything that would cause the results to be changed. But the new voting system work groups are, this is a big issue for Montgomery and Prince George's County. And so we are working with the state and talking to the vendor to try to get this issue resolved as soon as possible. But yes, I know that Montgomery and Prince George's County are very interested in trying to get this resolved.
What I observed when I was with Allison and the election in Virginia, is it just out of the question to be able to phone in results like they do in Virginia? I mean, they
costs
were
money.
right. The whole thing was done in 30 minutes.
Well, why does it cost money?
Well, you have to have somebody up here to answer phones.
Well, don't you have the call center running all day long?
We have
We'll
call
have like
centers.
10 people in there.
There's, you're having 228 locations calling in 250 precincts.
I have physically sat in a desk in Fairfax County answering the calls from the polling places on election night, as they have their equivalent of our election judges physically calling in and telling you over the phone what the results are. And I got to tell you, as careful as you are, by about the 10th polling place that I was answering calls from, you're having to be really careful to make sure your 3 doesn't look like a 5, and your 6 doesn't look like an 8, and there definitely is an accuracy issue in those handwritten reports of the results on election night that they then have to correct as part of their canvass process. It is a different cultural sort of process and set of expectations on where the errors occur that you then need to correct and what your allowance is for them at different points in the process. I certainly would not, I would so much rather get the wireless tools to do this than even be having to handwrite the numbers.
And that's what we're looking at, wireless transmission. But
Well,
the
I
wireless
agree.
transmission may just bypass the local boards completely, and it'll be directly to the State Board of Election. It won't be to us at all.
Oh, I see. So it would.
As long as we can post results. Or,
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
we'll post we will give the State Board's website.
We'll still be held responsible for coming out of those precincts to the state, wherever it goes. Okay.
The personnel that you have listed, is that the same as it's been in the past?
It was the same we had for the primary.
So it's 3 permanent staff, 12 temporary, and then from the state you got 1 regional manager, 1 county technician, and I don't know what is the Department of General Services. What's that?
It's one of the departments within Montgomery County, and when we do the poll books, we bring them over because we have such a short turnaround time. They come and help us that Friday and Saturday.
And what's the difference between the role of the 2 state employees?
The state employee is just our regional manager. They have all 5 counties that they manage. So that's who we go to if we have issues and problems. The county technician is somebody that's employed by the state. They work here with us for the whole time.
Okay. So the regional manager, that's Shafiq?
Yes.
I see. And then the county technician is someone who's on our staff?
No, they're actually on the state
They're on the state staff, but they're physically here, but
they're
only
physically
temporarily.
located
Or
here.
about
Yes.
4 weeks.
All the time or just during election time?
4 weeks.
Only
No,
for
just
election.
the 4 weeks prior to the election. 3 weeks before the election and 1 week during the canvass.
And this was a trial by fire election for both Janet and Lisa for 2 out of 3. Well, really between the primary and the general. It was a trial by fire year for both of them as our new 2 out of the 3 permanent staff members. And of the temporary employees, there's only what, 2 or 3 who have served in the presidential election?
It was
Yeah.
4. Darling.
Okay.
Justin Antonio, Mike,
So a
and
pretty
Darling.
small percentage of the team that, had that institutional memory going back to 2012. So it was a learning curve year for a lot of our IT folks. And I think you can see, in the results of the, over the process that they really worked hard and learned a lot and done a great job.
So with you guys, 2 of you being new, how do you bring yourself up to speed? I mean, how much do you rely on talking to colleagues or the state people or whatever?
I was new in the IT world,
Right.
but I was training here since
Right.
2007.
Right. No, I understand. You've been here a long time.
Yeah. So, but a lot of times after the elections, I worked with Shafiq and Jerry because I was still here, and they had already taught me a lot of this stuff. And Lisa, she actually was a county tech. She was a county tech before she came here
In other counties.
in other counties.
I see.
So it's basically learning the server downstairs I had to learn.
Thank you.
Personally, just learning, it was just the quantity of how many machines. I knew know the process and know what needs to be done, and just that county I came from, so it's a big difference.
Okay.
Right. Thank you, Janet.
You're welcome.
Election judge. Leslie is not here today. I'm just going to go over this really quick. She gave this to me. Basically, for their recruiting and outreach activities began in May of 2013. They attended 110 events for the primary and 86 events in the general. These included community events and festivals, local corporations, malls, colleges, libraries, community rec centers. Overall, they received 5,059 applications from voters who stated they had an interest in serving as an election judge. 3,900 approximately in the primary, and an additional 1,100 in the general election. The election judge training was developed by the state board. Their election judge manual is mandated by law, and the training began in August. All Montgomery judges complete a stage 1 training online, which includes the information with regards to ADA compliance, and stage 2 is in person, where they come in for the classroom, as well as the hands-on training. They go through procedural training for the judge position. They practice on the voting equipment. They'll practice issuing provisional ballots. We have open access walk-in practice during the 10 days prior to the election for judges to practice on the voting equipment, to ask questions. Judges will work one-on-one with the trainers. The chief judges are also required to attend a pre-election briefing. Generally speaking, it's the Friday and Saturday before the election when they pick up the bags. We will also provide them with any last-minute notifications from the state board. We will sometimes identify known media requests, changes in procedures. This will be an opportunity to reinforce the training. We had outreach and training at Mendez University, Jane Lawton in Bethesda, White Oak Community Center. A training evaluation was provided to each trainee. Information is included in your packet, which is this item. And we had some problems that when we were doing our update over the summer months, because of some overlap with staff, there were some problems with the book, but those eventually got ironed out. We had 179 Spanish-speaking judges, and we had 57 Spanish-speaking chief judges. We had 46 roamers to assist in better support at the precincts.
Were those bilingual?
The roamers?
Yeah.
No, the roamers are there to assist the chief judges in procedural and technical issues.
Are they all on staff? Your roamers, all staff people?
No, they are. They could be assigned from other departments. So DTS.
But they're basic county employees who know more than most people.
Well, some of them are county employees. Some of them are, people who've worked for us in the past, or maybe was a chief judge. And
it's not outsiders, though. I'm talking about you don't hire other types.
No, I did.
Thank you. That's
did
what
that once and never again. Election night closing. It's very important, and this is emphasized, the correct closing of the precinct. Precincts closed with no problems. The average actual times for closing a precinct ranged from 24 minutes to 2 hours and 8 minutes, though we did have several that came dragging in after 1 o'clock in the morning. Or 2 o'clock in the morning, I guess. Comment cards, there's a survey within your packet that talks about the voters' experience at early voting as well as election day. 90% believe that the polling place was well run, the judges are welcoming, and the judges were helpful. And we mailed general election experience. They received 1,500 responses from about 64% of the judges, and the data that they provided, it was anonymous, so that we could make more improvements in our election judge program. And as I said, this packet, this gives you an idea of what the job description is and what the pay is for the election judges, and then these are the activities. It identifies where we went and what we have identified as the Hispanic Latino population that would have been impacted by our outreach event. And that's pretty much it.
Does that have, I don't seem to have mine with me, does that have total number of judges and the breakdown, closing judges versus, closers and,
It was in here, yes.
It was
okay.
in your January advance packet.
That's what it was.
February.
Yes.
It was the January.
I tried to go through all my other packets and grab it. I did too, and I
I brought all
don't
kinds of stuff, not only
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I really want to question the numbers on closing time. The average number.
What they're talking about is closing in the precinct, not necessarily
Yeah.
coming here.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But I don't think you can say there were just a couple that, came at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock or, it was a real drag. Whatever is happening in the precincts, people are waiting until the whole place is closed up to get those results in here.
And the board has made it really clear that the first thing that we're going to do is run that tape and then either send a wireless transmission to here or the state board, or we're driving it to here or a satellite
Maybe a
location.
satellite. We need to talk about those again.
Well,
I know.
technology probably isn't going to allow satellite location.
Why is that?
Why not?
Because if we transmit the way, let me get the entire package before I start
Okay.
speculating.
Well,
But
okay.
we know that has to be changed.
That's the burning issue.
We have been browbeat over browbeat and beaten around the head with big oak branches. We get it. We know what the training needs to be, and the training will change.
Okay, and the training overall, that's the other issue. I mean, we've had a lot of new election judges. I don't know what you do about the issue of the no-shows. That, the last minute, you get to election day, and I can't tell you how many precincts where, I got there and, there was only, somebody that had never done anything before was filling in to be one of the chief judges. Not the only chief judge, but, just lots of new people having, big responsibilities and just not having the training for it.
Yep. Well, they have a manual. They come to the training class. They use the state manual.
Does the state take suggestions of things to go in the manual, or do they just forge ahead with what they want in it?
The manual that they currently have, all right, that's being reworked for this new voting system, they utilized an adult education vendor to help create the last version of the state manual, which was, I think, done in 2000, right before the presidential primary. And it was designed to improve learning on the part of adult learners.
But are they getting input from you and from the counties
Right,
in terms
and
of?
and that's one of the reports still to come with regards to Leslie Woods is on the committee, the election judge manual committee, and they are developing the new manual, and the state does have a vendor that is assisting them.
Part of it is the tasks themselves. I certainly agree that we can always improve our training. There is one of the fortunate things about this new system is, as we've discussed before, that we will have one memory card to pull out of the scanner, not 10 memory cards to pull out of 10 machines, and 10 sets of tapes, and 10 sets of longer and more detailed press yes and then press no and then press this button and that button. in shutting down each of these machines that the chiefs have to do while they are, by the way, responding to every, the person who wants to know exactly where the cone they just pulled in from inside needs to go, and, everything else that those chiefs need to do in the polling place. But fundamentally, we have the most robust training program in the state. We have a crew of temporary employees that we hire and really commit ourselves. I think our election judge team is to be commended for really striving very hard to make sure that they've got 3 to 4 trainers at all times in the classroom. We have a paper trail behind an individual evaluation that we have done to assess the skills of each of the 2,800 plus people that we have who are going to be serving on election day. And I think fundamentally there is a limit to the amount of information you can cram into the brains of these, couple thousand people in the number of hours that you can possibly bring them in. And so hopefully in this opportunity of having some new systems, we'll also have an opportunity to streamline some of that training and to be able to better focus on the key things that we really need people to remember and to do. It is an incredibly, having been an election judge myself, it is an incredibly huge amount of information that you really have to absorb. It's a big task to take on.
Oh, I agree. Having taken the training, I agree. David?
First, a couple of things just to support what Mary Ann said. We asked the question in the survey, how well did the training prepare you for your election day duties? And 30% of people answered somewhat.
Yeah.
And I think that is an alarmingly high number of people who basically are saying that they felt somewhat prepared but not very well prepared. And I would hope that we can have the very well category higher and the somewhat category quite, I was going to say somewhat lower, but a lot lower. And then the other thing that was notable to me was that the question about the closing judges, what time did you leave the polling place to go to the board? And these are people who are specializing essentially in closing the polls. 74% of them after 10 o'clock. 54.8% of them who responded in the after 10 category and 18.8% in the after 11 category. And that's, as I understand it, not consistent with what the expectations were for how long that that should take. I know we have a new system. I know we're going to have new training and all of that, but I think that we should be thinking about how to make that work. Has any thought been given to considering whether the model of having people work from 7 in the morning until 10 o'clock in the evening could be modified to have more positions where people work part of that time and not all of it? Because I would think that for anyone who works that amount of time, the possibility that things would go more slowly at the end of the day when the polls close, when you've been there since 7 or earlier in the morning, is quite large. And if you were to have people who who would split the day, there may be people who aren't able to take the whole day off, but are able to take a portion of the day off, who would be willing to help out if there's a way to do that.
We have part-time positions. We have opening part-time positions. We have closing part-time positions. We have roamers that only have to work from 7 until 8 o'clock. We have runners during the day. There are numerous opportunities. I will tell you that being able to get the 2,300 to show up on election day, I mean, if you want to have additional people, then you need to have more recruiters, you need to have more training, because you're going to double the number of individuals that if you want to, let's say we only do 50% of the precincts into the split shift that you're talking about. Okay, so that means that, let's say you need 1,000 to run a regular 6 a.m. to 10, 11 o'clock time period. Now you need 2,000. And the question is, are you going to come up with the 2,000?
But we don't know
But
if we don't
you
ask.
you might if they knew they were only signing up from 7 a.m. till noon and
Right, or till 3.
or whatever the
Could I-
halfway time.
Could I ask, in that same vein, if two people came in and said, "We'll work as a team, a tag team, if you will. I'll work from 6 in the morning till noon. She'll work until closing, or whatever." Would you do it that way? Could you find a way? I know lots of older women who've said they would love to work at the polls half a day, and if two came in, so you didn't have the worry of filling in a slot.
And I know lots of younger people who would work for a portion of the day because they could still go to work and get in their
Well,
full
I'm
day
talking
of
about
work if they
doing
don't have to take the whole day
I'm
off.
talking about doing it
how
as
the
doubles.
kids get home.
Yeah.
I just thought, just sitting here, part of one of the major issues is that the closing judge brings in the results.
Yeah.
And they cannot leave until the polling place is shut down. Is it possible that we could have judges whose responsibility was to get the results in?
That's one of the things that that's what I think I thought I said at the very beginning, is that under this new system, because most polling places will only have 2 of these, they'll run the reports, they'll run 2 reports, and then the flash drive can either wirelessly transmit the results, or if that can't happen, then they drive the results in. All of the other pieces that the current election chief judges need to do. Because here's the other part. They need to hit certain legal certification requirements so that this election can be certified by you.
Right.
So they need to write down all of these tamper tape numbers. They need to write down the various seal numbers that they're placing in. All of those pieces have to be done. And quite honestly, by that criteria, which is what the state judges the local board upon, they improved dramatically compared to even 2 years ago.
And they'll only have maybe
2.
5 pieces in the
They'll have 2, and then, they'll have 2 pieces. Most polling places will have 2 touchscreens.
And then
Instead of having
DREs.
like 90
and
steps in
maybe
the
some will
process.
have extra scanners. Maybe.
Most of the places that we have on election day, they will have 1 of these and 2 of these. Now, there's going to be places like Leisure World and places that we know that we have some sort of issue that will have more. But we can, immediately the workload is reduced.
My point was, could there not be a judge who just responsibility is to get in the vote tabulation?
There will be 1 Democrat and 1 Republican that will drive the flash drive.
And that's a different person from the closing judge.
No, it will be the closing judge.
That's
Closing
my point.
What's going to happen, we're going to change the instructions. Okay. All right? The state gets it. All right? Nikki and Linda get it. Montgomery County and the Washington Post and whoever else want election results at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock. Their instructions for the local boards will be, you're going to take that flash drive, you're going to run those 2 reports, and wait till you see those reports because they're teeny tiny. Yeah. But you'll run those 2 reports, you'll wrap 1 with the report, and the flash drive will be in there. It'll be placed in a secure case, sealed, and those 1 Democrat and 1 Republican will bring it here if it's not wirelessly transmitted.
And do they have to bring it here anyway?
They
but
have
they
to.
can wirelessly transmit it
They have
beforehand.
to bring it here because once again, the results that we get on election night are unofficial. The first thing that we have to do the next day, and this hasn't changed, it's still the same law and they're not changing it, is we have to run everything all over again the next morning. 100% verification. Everything that's tabulated has to be retabulated, and we compare the two. And most of the time it's human error.
I think implicit in your question, Donnie, is the sort of roles there between the chiefs and the closing judges. And
No, I understand the role. My question, my point is, if the closing judge has to wait until everything is shut down,
right.
Could there not be another judge who can bring in the results
It will
before
never be one judge.
a runner.
It will have to be a Democrat and Republican.
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying, but couldn't there be another set of people responsible for delivering the vote while the closing judge is closing down the polling station?
Some of these things are, the closing judge will not be doing those steps.
Those
the
are the
chiefs
chief
will
judge.
have to be the ones closing down the equipment.
But I know
And
that
then
they
the
do that
closing
now.
judge will hope, so if it takes 20 minutes to shut down all the 80, 90 steps, it takes generally takes longer than that. But if that process takes 20 minutes now that the closing judge has to sit around and wait or help be part of that process of closing down, now the process is many fewer steps, it should take many fewer minutes, and the closing judge will be able to focus on just getting those results in here and not having to help the chief with the shutdown process.
Well, I have been in the last 4 years, I've been at a lot of different precincts when they've closed down, and they do not help. They wait until everything's done.
Instructions are going to be different.
Okay.
The state board heard Montgomery County in the Washington Post.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Good.
Yeah. And
Whatever
the system
works.
is different.
Yeah.
And this system is much simpler.
David.
Is there anything that we can do to improve our recruitment efforts for those who are below the age of 50 for our judges?
50 is young. Then.
I understand. It seems younger every day. But I think about 3/4 of our judges are over age 50 and about 40% are over age 60. And I don't know if that reflects our electorate.
Practical training. Practical training. That's how they would absorb what's going on. Just reading those manuals is not good enough.
No, I agree.
They have to encourage them to come and do practical
No, I
training.
agree. I think that's true for all ages. That reading a manual
A certain age you need
will never
more.
get across. But my point that I was trying to make is that I would think, I know that we've made a big effort in the 17 to 20-year-old category, but I was wondering what can be done to broaden the base of our judges more generally, not only on the basis of age, although that one is pretty striking, but on every basis. I mean, it seems that we have a certain profile of most of our judges, and we should probably be we should come closer to reflecting our electorate.
They're older. Our electorate in Montgomery County is either very old, or not very old, because I'm that age, or very young. So we have, I think, 25% of the registered voters are over 62 years of age. And I forget what the youth is. I mean, it's a growing portion of the population.
Right, but
Well, I guess
we're
one of the
roughly
questions
40%.
I ask you, David, is what have you done at your workplace to allow for us to recruit people that live in Montgomery County to number one, register to vote, or number two, to be an election judge?
Well, I'm not allowed to do it at my workplace. I'm ethically prohibited from doing work for this board at my workplace.
But we could.
Feel free, please.
So
Please
if
do.
you could provide us the name.
I'm not allowed to.
I see.
There's also, and without even getting into the sort of how people's interest in being an election judge and voter turnout higher in the older community as well. I will say that having come from the nonprofit community before I got into election administration, not having any kind of limitations on my ability to do recruitment drives, and having done recruitment drives in my own office, retention was an issue. My peers often found the hours, the commitments of being an election judge to be very difficult to balance with work and family and travel and whatever else they were doing for their jobs, and tended to work one election and then not do it again. So, and not because they weren't up to the job, but because it was a long day. It was sort of a phase in life when a lot of people have a lot of other commitments and things. But I would say, Gilberto, I know without Leslie here, I don't know if you can speak to the extent to which there's demographic targeting that we do.
Yeah, we're doing corporate targeting across Montgomery County. We are going to set up a meeting with Montgomery College. They have, in 2014, we initiated what's called a conversation with enrichment league. Staff have access to enrichment leagues to participate as election judges or to serve in other community capacity, whether it's at Man of Food or Salvation Army, etc. So we're going to meet with them to extend that league as a so it doesn't count as an action for students. Because as you know, when you're an undergrad, you have syllabus, and if you participate in an election is not acceptable. That's an absence. So we're working on that as well. Also, once we go back to renegotiating of our contract with the union, we're looking at verbiage in the OHR guidelines where election judge service is also seen as jury duty service for county employees. We're also working with University of Maryland right now with Professor Howe. He's a poli-sci professor, and he gave us about 12 college students to assist on election day. And we're looking at how to try to flex and leverage that department and other departments within the University of Maryland system, so they could also serve as election judges. So we have all these little projects going on, really aiming for 2016 because we're looking at the change of the voting system. So we want to kind of use that and leverage that because we will lose judges who are accustomed to touchscreens and may not want to come back.
Right.
And so we're looking at kind of that flux internally with our judges, but also looking at other non-traditional relationships with other agencies in academia, nonprofit, corporate America, etc. So we are really hitting all angles as much as we can.
I would like to make one other point about election judge recruitment, which is that it's not people who are willing to serve as election judges that we need, fundamentally. It's people who are willing to commit 3 months, 4 months out, that they will absolutely be there on election day, and they will attend the training class now, 2 months, 3 months before the election. That is something that we also, have difficulty getting people to, especially new entrants into the process, younger people who have a lot of commitments. That I believe, without our election judge recruitment team in here, I think they would probably agree with my statement that there tends to be a certain younger demographic that wants to, that volunteers later in the process, that's ready and willing to come be a standby or something late in the day, but that doesn't get themselves locked into an assignment 3 and 4 months out. And so that's also a barrier that we need to work through in order to achieve the goal of getting a more diverse, younger crowd.
You also may have success, though, if we're not offering a 16-hour shift. If we're offering an 8-hour shift, you might have a better success with those who have those other obligations.
But the financial piece of that also has to come forward. We need more recruiters, not so much more recruiters, more trainers to get more classes covered because it is the law, they have to be trained.
Right.
And as we all know, we went over the budget 4 hours ago. We didn't get that overtime money, and we did not get the extra staff, not even to do the acceptance testing on the voting equipment. Okay.
Okay. Christine, I know you've got a long commute. And Jim, I have to tell you, this meeting represents 2.5 meetings because we left early in January because the snow was coming, and February we didn't have a quorum, and so they never quite this bad. Christine.
We
Good
finish by
evening.
5 o'clock.
One thing, Mr. Neiman, that I would reiterate from what Hilberto had just stated. From being here for a while now and watching recruiting and our strategies, we have evolved trying to reach out in the last couple cycles to a younger demographic by going to the colleges and going to the corporate world where we usually have been sitting in on their lunch hours and we have a table. Those people are people that we were not necessarily aggressively going after for earlier on. So, we are trying to reach out to that demographic.
Good. Thank you.
I'm going to try to highlight what is on this report. I won't read to you all. Operations includes several functions throughout the election process on election day and early voting. And as you know, we are included in campaign filing, future vote, and Section 203, election judge recruiting and training, polling place coordination, polling place support program, our mapping services, and our supply warehouse are all part of operations. I think we did a fairly significant job about keeping things efficient for the polling places in the general. Once we ran the reports from the judges on the performance, we found out that 52% performed at an outstanding level. That is, Margaret alluded to that earlier, we've gotten quite a significant bump in their performance over the last cycle or two. No particular issues came up in this election. Probably the one different issue that we dealt with 2012 and 2014 was redistricting, and you all helped with that immensely. Campaign filing for the gubernatorial is the busiest time for local boards because then is when we represent all of our local candidates, so that we're very busy. Mr. McKevitt filed approximately 140 people that were on the ballot for local contests, and I would say about 400 different calls and emails were addressed to help people that had questions about elections in general, but with that campaign emphasis, possibly calls would be involved with mapping. It wouldn't necessarily be how do I file, but it might be a candidate who wants to look at their district, and they would be calling about mapping. And there were 400 different inquiries that we addressed over the cycle. Along with that, we did proofing and verification of ballots. We created the certificates of nomination for the general election candidates. And then along with that, because of the new software in MD Voters, staff were trained for the new filing software that we'll be taking, or that we're involved with now, that will go forward from this day. Supply Warehouse did an excellent job. They had to cover 9 centers. All of the supplies that went out in a timely manner. They were delivered. We didn't have very many requests for additional materials, so it tells us that through our checklists, we were able to supply the centers as well as the polling places with what they needed. One particular issue that Supply always needs to address, and in the gubernatorial is a particular challenge, is delivering the correct amount of paper ballots. And with the new system, that is going to be even a more challenging effort. With the general, we had 33 ballot styles. With the primary, we had 60-some ballot styles. So in order to pack all of those ballots correctly and get them to the correct location is a challenge, and they did a good job. Everything was done correctly. All the ballots went to the correct location. Election night, we talked a bit about that earlier. We've discovered by using the double car lines and the adequate number of personnel, we've been able to move the cars through quickly and receive the information that you all are looking for as quickly as possible. The reconciliation that goes on after the election seemed to go well. There were minimal errors by the election judges, and we attribute that to the reinforcement of trying to reinforce the accuracy that's needed during an election with the election judges. Polling place support is part of operations. One of the things that we are trying to emphasize with polling place support is that this is real time, and it is the responsibility of the volunteers to report back any concerns that they have. If they take that initiative to either speak with the judges or speak with us directly with an issue that they see, whether it be no electioneering or a provisional misstep, that helps us direct and focus immediately, not hearing about it after the election. So that is the glory to the polling place support, to help us address things in a real-time manner. Training and the trainee evaluations, we went over quite a bit about the training. And in Leslie's report, she mentions about the 3 sites. We've found that that is particularly important to our judges or our potential judges, being able to give them a choice of where they train really has helped. Coming out to Gaithersburg is not always convenient for some people, and being able to take the training closer to home. The training is the same. It's no different than if they were to come here, but we're taking it out, and that does help with, we were talking about retention and interest. That does definitely help the interest. Evaluations, the trainers take it to heart about their training process, and they feel that the evaluations that they present to the potential judges have helped them develop a better training class, and they are constantly evolving based on the comments from the trainees. Polling places. Polling places opened on time and few reported lines. We have done a brief wait time analysis that I believe.
Oh, yeah. It's here somewhere.
This was
We did this
came after.
after we received your packet. So we thought you would find that interesting. That was based on 250 precincts. We handed out a card to the last person in line at 7 o'clock. That voter was to hand the card in to the check-in judge as they checked in. And the first half hour of voting is reflected in this bar. And the average was less than 2 minutes. We had over 6,000 votes.
That's waiting to vote, waiting to get in.
Not waiting to get in. They might have been in line at 6:30. I don't know that. But what we did is the line that had been created outside the door before 7 o'clock,
Right.
the last person that was in the line received the card.
Right.
The doors opened at 7 and they were allowed to come in. We had numerous electronic poll books operable. So if we had 10 people waiting outside the door at 7 to come in, they would have been dispersed over, say, maybe 3 or 4 lines. And maybe 2, 3 people were in line to check in. And so the average worked out to be less than 2 minutes to process those initial people that were in line.
To process them so they could get to the poll book.
Poll book.
Yeah, got it.
So this,
To get to the voting.
The
unit.
voting, yeah.
so this is up until the time they vote?
This is up until the time they check into the poll book.
When they walk up to the check-in.
So you're
I'm
sa-
surprised it's even this long. I mean, no, there was nobody in line to vote.
Yeah,
To speak of.
This is a sign of low voter turnout.
Yeah.
But this is a big issue with the state legislature and the Election Assistance Commission.
Oh, wait times.
And John Willis
Wait time, yeah.
had asked us.
Oh.
The wait time until you check in, not the wait time until you actually get to vote.
No.
Right.
Because as we know, you can be in another huge line waiting for, to vote.
That was all they were measuring. was
Okay.
The time it took from the last person in line to the time you checked into.
And they only checked it at that first time in the morning
Yes.
Suddenly.
For election day, yes.
for election day.
Early
Okay.
voting, they did something different.
Okay.
So the numbers at the bottom are the number of people in line. The numbers on the side is how long each person had to wait.
That's an average.
Yes.
One-
Before 7.
1 to 2 people, the average was just slightly over 2 minutes. 3 to 5 voters or people, individuals, was maybe 2.5 minutes. The average for 6 to 10, and what this shows me when I look at it is as they started going, the check-in judges, you could see how their momentum started going and the process got better. Because as your numbers go up, the time that it took to process went down.
What are the-
So
what are
they
the-
were
what are the
getting in
numbers
a
of,
rhythm.
What are the numbers of precincts that are recorded here?
The precincts overall were 250. We had 16 that didn't report. There, along with this graph, there's a bulleted report that explains some of the data.
Yeah, it's there.
So 16, actually it's based on 227 polling places. 250 precincts were represented, minus the 16 that did not report. So we had about, 211 sites report.
And do you know what the distribution was of these 5 categories?
The distribution as the number of voters.
The number of sites. In other words,
I could tell you that,
Yeah.
but on this particular graph, I do not have that information, but I could provide you with that distribution. I can tell you just off the top of my head from remembering the spreadsheet, the 17 to 31 individuals in line was a smaller number than
Right.
the individuals of 3 and 5. 3 and 5, 6 to 10 was the largest portion of individuals in line at any given polling place.
Thank you.
I'll just briefly go on a little bit about polling places. One measure that we hope to take on for the new voting system is to develop a relationship with the community of people that have special needs. We're going to ask them to partner with us when we go out to do surveys and have them advise us on where they see that we need to make special accommodations at polling places so that we are compliant or doing what we feel is important to them. So that's an initiative that we're going to take on with this election. And overall, delivery went well. We had 400 pieces delivered. We didn't have any incorrect deliveries. Everything was at their proper polling place, and they were there and ready for Monday night meetings.
That is great. Thank you very much. Any other questions for Christine? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Future vote?
Gilberto?
Yes.
Good afternoon.
Good evening.
students. That's exactly the size. So once again, Future Vote had an important part in the outreach to the community and also informing and educating future voters in Montgomery County. They supported us, our staff, 155 events during the gubernatorial election cycle. We had 822 students participate for the general elections and during early voting. We did a breakdown of the makeup of the students. Predominantly public schools. We're trying to do a bigger push with parochial schools and homeschool. We've gotten some great contacts within the homeschool community. We're going to do some.
Can I interrupt you one second? Because you've used this phrase several times now. No private schools.
Yes. Private school, parochial school, private school. Yes.
Oh, okay. They're in there together.
Exactly.
Okay, I just thought they were all parochial.
Private school, parochial.
So like Landon.
Exactly.
Non-public.
Non-public, and yes. Exactly.
Okay.
Yes. And also Chinese day schools and Jewish day schools.
Okay.
So there's across the gamut. About 96% were public. Private schools were about 2%. Homeschools were 2%. The breakdown between middle schools and high schools, 67% were middle school students and 33% were high school. If you look at the breakdown by grade, the biggest grouping is sixth graders, 27%, and as they go through the program, it goes less and less. As I interview some of the students in the upper class, high schools, juniors and seniors, they have their credits. They're really focused on college, on moving to the next level. So their time to participate is lessened because they're more focused on academics or athletics, looking at the Division 1, 2, and 3 schools. What I really like also is the bilingual ability. We do collect that information across the board. And if you look at the language, we have Spanish 19%, French 6%, Chinese 14%, Hindi 4%, and others. And the languages listed are the languages that were covered by the other students, the 259 students. So that really kind of supports not only our Section 203 mandate, but also other languages, because the students really reflect the community and also the school community. So that kind of gives a good opportunity. And what's interesting about the program is the students themselves, a lot of them obviously do not register to vote yet. A lot of them may be U.S. residents, and you get that kind of glimpse of democracy in action. And we do get parents who are residents who do initiate the process of becoming naturalized citizens because their children are very involved in the process. Out of the 155 events across the county, we really collaborate with a lot of organizations, nonprofits such as the League of Women Voters, academia, Montgomery College, and Mendez, businesses such as Discovery, Comcast, Geico. So we really try to go across the board. One thing I'm also proud of our students is they provided over 4,800 hours of community service hours for this agency. About 319 hours of office support, 406 hours of outreach, 148 hours of early voting, and close to 4,000 election day hours, which also encompass early voting. So the students really get a gist of the entire process beyond registering to vote. They rubber band up pencils, they do auditing of cabling, they help us with outreach with the parents. They are very educated, and I always see a lot of, for example, vote by mail absentee requests in my fax from all over the world, from students who have done Future Vote and they know their voting rights and don't fax it in. I did a kind of a cross section. I would randomly call some of the students, and I told the students at the Future Vote training that this time they have the opportunity to nag their parents to vote. So they do. So I'm proud of our students. Also, they're extremely critical for our outreach, considering the budget constraints. There really are working bees, and we work closely with the nonprofits and the other kind of stakeholders in the community, and we're going to bolster that, and we're going to leverage their interests, especially with the new voting system and all the different changes.
Was this election the first time that we paid students to be election judges?
No, we've always had election judge students. When the 17-year-old category, we've been looking at to kind of bolster.
Right.
And in 2004, when we initiated Future Vote, it was predominantly middle schools and a couple of underclassmen. As they grew to get that age, we started pushing more for them to become election judges. I challenge them at training. I tell them, every other year you're going to come back. I really challenge you to become an election judge. And the students that really help out, that kind of they do everything from the pencils to the polls. they're the ones that I will support special letters of recommendation. We've had judges as young as 17, Noah Guthman, who was Mr. Bethesda. He was very active, done everything. He still comes back, actually during his break, to serve as a judge on his own dime, which is interesting. But we have students across the gamut, across communities, across interests. So yeah, so that's.
I think it was really noticeable in the last election where we seemed to do a greater push for it, and they were outstanding. I mean, I have to say, every place where I encountered the students. In the polling place as a judge, I think I even encountered a chief judge student, but boy, top of their game,
They're very sophisticated and they're very interested in civics. What's interesting is the students applying to the program, they're the ones who are very interested in history and civics and participation. But the goal is to really foster these youth into that role of election judges before they go away to college. And really the emphasis is for them to be that kind of informed voter, so we get less calls. So.
You don't go to Holton Home. I don't see Holton Home.
No, in the past we have gone back. Pretty much every private school we've touched between 2004 and present day. Some are more active than others. A lot of times it depends on the family. There's some families with multiple siblings and they're very active. So we've always been good at prep, good counsel, Stone Ridge, because there's always that one judge who has children at the schools, and we bring them in that way. So a lot of judges will recruit for us their own children to serve, and there's that expectation. It's because civic-minded families really, they have civic-minded children. So really the focus will be between now and the presidential is to increase that 17-year-old, junior, senior kind of category, but also bring in the community colleges, the local colleges, because they do go away after they graduate.
Dr. Z, I know you have, in the past, you've quantified how much it would cost us if we actually had to pay all of these volunteers.
Margie comes up with the number. Yeah, Margie comes up with the number.
We do. We give it to the county.
So, but it's a considerable amount of.
It's about 5,000 hours of volunteer hours.
Yeah, so and depending on the position, whether it's a judge or working as EA1 or EA2 internally, I think
at least 2 FTEs.
Yeah, it's been we're about the 800,000 mark, and hopefully by the presidential, maybe we can break $1 million afterwards. So.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you, Gilberto.
Thank you.
And any inroads you guys have, by all means, email it to me.
Now I know you'll probably be part of the program in Ocean City, right?
We'll see. Yeah.
Well, there's usually something on. I mean, I think the rest of the state is so impressed with.
And do we get calls?
That part of our program, we're light years ahead of everybody else on that. It's great. Thank you.
Okay, update on issues brought to the board. I sent this to the board.
Are these election day issues, or
these were election day issues brought to
why did I think we were doing this at the next meeting?
Well, we can. We were going to do just the electioneering boundary complaints at the next April meeting. I was just going to walk through 2 through 11.
Gosh knows where it is
This was
at this
February.
point. I know it was, but we had board comments. We had comments from MCDCC, and you said that was all going to be taken up in April.
No, we were just going to deal with the only written comments that I had were from the Montgomery County Democratic Central Committee.
Yeah, MCDCC.
And so the electioneering boundaries issues for the precincts I was going to bring up in April, but the balance of it I was going to talk about today. It'll be quick.
I think we need to put that
Okay.
over till April.
Okay.
Also, MCDCC. Is Dolly here? I think she left.
She left.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. No, we.
Okay, that's fine. All right.
So.
All right, then the new voting system is here. For your information, the state put out the calendar for the official election calendar, which already has the wrong date for the primary.
Yeah.
But it's there.
Still technically the right date.
Technically the right date.
But unlikely to be the date.
Unlikely. I've sent you the latest version last month that really has not changed of the state board timeline for the new voting system.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are 3 reports from the various work groups. There's the new voting system. First, project management. I'm on the project management committee. We are working on the ballot management. We're coordinating with the local board of election requirements. These are issues such as how many ballots are going to be ordered versus the accounting of the ballots at election day versus early voting center. The need for how we're going to get the ballots from the polling place on election day back here the night of the election. Those are the kind of issues that are being discussed. We did a document review of the entire online library for the state board. Rules and regulations, review and update, mock election, pilot elections, and audits. The first thing that we did was we did an initial review of the regulations, and we have made recommendations working with the state board staff we made recommendations asking for the Attorney General's office to advise if there's any further statutory changes that need to be made in a rush prior to the presidential primary election. Yes.
May I ask you, when I read this over, 2 things came to my mind. Is Kevin invited to any of these so we know whether or not there's conflict with what we're doing, or that he has...
At this point, no. They're working with the Attorney General's office, which is the lawyer for the state board.
Right. We met. Okay, so there's no interest in having him there. And it's somebody internally here coordinating with the county council task force, any of their recommendations as it would apply to this. And do we need to bother?
No, this is just dealing with the implementation.
And there's nothing on the task force that would have anything to do with this. Okay.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
The document subgroup, we compiled all of the various documents. There were 300 of them that were utilized by the state board and the local board. We did our first meeting here. It was an all-day meeting, and we went through each of the documents and identified all of the documents that either need new guidelines, recommended for deletion, or redundant, or no longer applicable. State board staff is updating that list, and then that list will be circulated back to the project management team, as well as the various subgroups, the election judge committee, the LVE requirements, communications committee, and state board staff, and sometimes the Attorney General's office. Ballot management committee is in the process of developing recommendations on the ballot accounting for early voting on election day. Right now, it appears that the absentee ballots accounting will remain the same as it is currently. There's a lot of concern about the accounting for the ballot marking stations that needs to be developed with regards to the vendor, and then auditing those ballots. We're also asking for input from the election judge subgroup, and then there will be some recommendations for the state board to review and decide if they want to approve or not. The mock election, pilot elections, and the audit subgroups have not met at this time. These are all subgroups of the project management committee. These subgroups are waiting for further information from other stakeholders or legislature, pending legislation. So that's what the project management committee has been working on. You want to talk about communication?
Sure. And just to make sure we're clear, this is a state process where some of our staff have been appointed by the state to serve on the committees. So it's not a creature of Mayo. It's not a creature that we've created. It is a creature that the state has designated those of us at the local boards to provide input into certain pieces of the process. Margaret did have an opportunity to propose staff members to serve on the various work groups, but there has been some conversations, here and there at times about bringing in the attorneys or bringing in sort of other stakeholders in the process, and it's basically been told to us that it's premature for that. That these are fundamentally, there's the state staff who are the core of the process, and then there are primarily election directors and deputy directors, but also some other staff from the local boards that they've brought in at these into these work groups to be part of the planning process as well. It's just sort of the way that the structure is working. And for the communications work group in particular, the role of the work group is really to advise the state. Ultimately, it's state personnel who are making these decisions. So, for example, there is an RFP that the state did develop, but that needed, for confidentiality reasons, to be something that really only the state personnel were privy to the discussions on. So the communications work group's role begins after the RFP has been issued. And now, once they select a vendor, which we don't have a role in, but once the state board selects its vendor, through the state's processes, then the Department of Public Works and everything that they have to go through in procurement, then we will have an opportunity to speak with, to work with the creative services agency that they bring in. I believe that it was a $1.8 million contract that was in the RFP for creative services. Now, if they end up buying advertising in the DC media market, in the Baltimore media market, then money can go fast. I think I can predict at this point, or to the extent that I can predict anything, that those costs for actually purchasing advertising space in the DC media market and the costs for the graphic design and development will probably have to bear some of the cost of the printing. But certainly the graphic design and development of printed materials, that these are core things that I think we can expect to come out of an ad agency that will be that is to be selected and that will be working directly with the state board of elections. So that notion of us purchasing advertising in the DC media market, we're sort of crossing our fingers and hoping that that is something that the state will do under their relationship with this ad agency. But we're still in those discussions to really find out.
Well,
the RFP was really broad, so we don't know yet.
I mean, you don't know whether it includes production costs plus plus buying the time. I mean, 1.8 million. And you've got DC market and Baltimore market. I mean, there's more than one media market, print as well as everything else, plus all the creativity. Creating the materials, right?
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. And the Salisbury market and the Pittsburgh market for Western Maryland. Right. 4 markets for television in Maryland.
Yeah.
And that's just when you're talking about, that's before you get talking about the shoe leather. Now, they have also, they have not selected anybody yet, but through the staffing agency that the state has to do all of their staffing for the new voting system replacement project, they did advertise for a voter outreach coordinator. It's a temporary role for the election cycle, and they've been doing the interviews for that. And so, we do understand that there is going to be a full-time temporary voter outreach coordinator at the state who will be working with us to help us handle the request to go to various fairs or events, or really, as much as anything, helping us with tracking of what everybody's doing with the state and making sure that the requests that they get come to us. We don't know, we're talking about one person, so this is not somebody who's going to be in a position to physically go out and do all of the events. Is it possible that, an advertising firm could have a component of what they do be, bringing out people, but we're not expecting that. We're not expecting to have human support in going out to a fair and handling.
Well, certainly not one. If it's just one person they're bringing on board to head up something like that, we don't really need that, frankly.
Exactly. Right.
We're pretty good at doing our own, but we could use people power.
Right. So we'll certainly coordinate with that person once they come on board, and we're glad that we're going to have that support. What we've been focusing most of our attention on, our group has really just met once, and what we focused our attention on really was beginning the process of talking about the sample ballot. The sample ballots vary widely across the state. I got my hands on copies of the sample ballots for most of the counties in the state, and We have a group of those that we've compiled. It's interesting. Many of them are simply one page, 11 by 17, that is folded over twice and sent out because they only have one ballot style, and much less, and they don't have the Spanish language mandate, with much less information than we provide in our sample ballot. And there's really a diversity of the formats that people use. But the fundamental question that we've had to confront, and our work group has certainly recommended to the state already, that the ballot image that is put out is to be the paper ballot, the ballot that you will mark by hand. So that we're not bearing the additional cost of putting out in the sample ballot both that and the entire screen. That is what the voters will see at early voting. Since at early voting, the voters will be using the express vote to, we're not anticipating using the screenshots. We're no longer anticipating having screenshots go out in the sample ballot. We're only anticipating having the version that is what you would mark by hand with the bubble.
Which won't be available for early voting.
Right. Right.
So no sample ballot for early voting, basically.
Well, or if we don't do it that way, then we have at least twice, really more than twice, because the screen, it takes up a lot more real estate for the screenshots. So really, more than twice the real estate and the printing costs. What we recommended in our meeting to the state staff was that we work toward a sample ballot publication, which will have the actual facsimile of the fill in the bubble ballot, but to have part of the resources of this ad agency be focused on helping us develop the materials in a smaller use of space to explain how this is different than what you will see at early voting. And when you go to early voting, you will see something that looks like this, but that is not providing, all of the screenshots that you would have
really bad
on the touch
news.
screen.
Yeah, I was going to say. So you don't think we can send out a ballot that looks like the early voting ballot?
Instead of one page,
Well,
maybe two, you'll have
You
7,
need
8,
to
9.
understand that do you want us to run a ballot marking device so you can see what it looks like?
Sure.
Can you do that real quick, Janet? Naheed, why don't you go up and vote?
No.
I thought one of us has to vote to cancel hers.
We're going to have her do the ballot marking device. The thing about the ballot marking device and the paper that goes with it, it's voter specific. So when you vote for, let's say, Larry Hogan or Anthony Brown, the only thing that appears is the name that you selected. It doesn't. It's not,
when you print it out, it doesn't show the whole list of
It doesn't show you who
candidates.
you didn't vote for.
correct.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's one of the
So
marketing
this is
problems.
touch screen like the old touch screens, looks different. But when we have told everybody they don't ever have to vote on the touch screen again, we lied.
Well, not really, because the paper,
I know.
it's the paper
All
that
the
will be
people that I
counted.
say,
There's no
my
memory
Back to the Future.
saved
When I say,
with
we're
regards
going
to
paper
the
ballots,
touch
They're
screen.
going to think
It's like I compare it to a $5,000 pencil,
All right.
a very expensive pencil.
What is this machine over here?
That doesn't
This
sound.
is the poll book. But
That's the old poll book.
yeah, but now we have an additional printer that goes with it. This is the Express Ballot printer, the Express Pass printer, and this like takes the place of the voter access
Yes,
card.
yes.
So it activates the ballot. It'll print a header.
It prints out activation barcode, a verification of 9 to 10-digit verification code, and then the ballot header that will be up top.
Ballot header
And
meaning
that will
ballot
be
style.
on this paper ballot. Okay.
Yes.
On this little.
So there's nobody
Oh, okay.
that has to check things again like they used to with our other. Remember how you would
Oh, the
wait
back-
until they pulled up, make sure they had the right screen?
Right.
Don't have to do that, right?
Don't have to do that
Okay.
any longer.
So there's the legal requirement is that the actual facsimile of the ballot be sent out in a sample ballot. There are 2 actual ballot types here, one of which would be the hand-marked ballot, and one of which would be this card that only shows who you voted for and not who you did not vote for. The touch screen doesn't meet the legal requirement of being the actual facsimile of the ballot, first of all. Plus, it has the additional real estate of what it would need to show all of the contests. You'll see as you get a chance to vote on the express vote.
These aren't going to have to be reproduced, though.
No,
Like a
they're
provision.
tabulated. Show her how it's tabulated.
But what you're saying is that people, the device that people are going to use will not necessarily be in the sample ballot that they receive.
The voting experience will vary significantly between early voting and election day.
Right.
And so we're going to have to tell that story in the
Two
sample
different.
ballot.
No, you have. To me, you would use both. You'd have to show both.
It'll tell you, right. So we need to show both, but we need to show the actual facsimile of the ballot at a minimum.
Okay.
Let's listen.
Yeah.
That was a interesting point. It tells you if you didn't select.
Yeah, different than the other touch screens. It'll let you know that if you didn't vote on this machine, it'll let you know that instead of like how the DREs turn red, it'll let you know if you didn't scroll all the way down or you're missing some selections or you didn't pick all that in the right race. It'll let you know. And just like this machine, if you're casting a blank ballot, like you know how some people just cast blank ballots, or you vote or undervoted, it'll let you know. It'll pop up on the screen. It'll let you know that I have not made any selections. Would I like to cast a ballot? I can cast a ballot. Or I can return the ballot. And
Oh, you can return the ballot, and if you missed one,
You can fix it.
one thing, you can get it back at it.
Think of how bad the lines will be if we're not showing people what they're actually doing.
Now, do you just let it go if you
Go there
didn't
and
want to
say,
vote?
"What-
Yep, and
this-
I'll
I didn't
take
see
cash
this
ballot, and
Oh,
I'll drop
okay.
it in and you go.
Okay, so I created the ballot activation card for the heat.
Ooh.
Say,
Now, this other one is the hand.
I'll make my choice.
The vote. Okay.
Well, this one counts both. It counts both. When she do that, she'll feed it for the other counts.
Yeah.
Put it in here.
you're saying of the part of people. or the
There's no information on top of that. It's the barcode holds all the information.
Oh, okay.
So there's
Barcode
not-
does not hold the information about the voter, just
Just
the
the
ballot
ballot
style.
So she goes up and just presses the one she wants.
So if you go to next
Just like
screen,
we already know how to do
instead
it.
of scrolling down, they'll tell you.
Why aren't we able to use these? They're not going to be ready in time for early voting? I'm not sure I remember
What?
why we have to have only this for early voting.
Well, that's because this is,
Okay, there's
you
my
can,
votes.
if we were to have the traditional paper ballot,
Yeah.
then every time somebody checks
Okay.
in, we would have to go search for the one of 33
Oh, that's
ballot
right, in the eighth
styles.
place. That's right.
This automatically, if David Naiman
That's my
is in a
vote.
specific precinct and he
You
belongs
have
to
one
a
on
certain
the back.
political party,
You had a
he
choice
checks
on the
in, it will encode that he gets the Democratic ballot for the specific ballot style of his, in this case, congressional district, and I guess that
It's
would
one
be
on
the
the
big
other
one
side.
this time.
Okay.
Thank you. I didn't vote on the back. Oh.
Now, are there going to be pencils available that are the appropriate pencils?
It's a ink.
Ink?
You use black ink or a dark blue ink. You can use.
Oh, you can use it. Are there going to be lots of them available for people that don't have them?
Yeah, we're going to send plenty of pens and pencils out. Yeah.
And the judge's going to be instructed to get them back?
We'll have
Yeah,
to
can
get
you
to
imagine
I
that?
mean, I can see hundreds of them leaving.
We'll need people,
We should
And then-
hand out pens that have the early voting dates on.
No, okay.
So just to recap, now that we're all looking at this in a different mindset, we're starting to think about how we're going to need to do voter outreach. The voters experience walking up to the poll is going to be what it's been before.
Yeah, I know, I picked the Ford.
I don't know which one pause until everybody's done playing and voting.
Yeah, I was gonna say, can I get a chance to vote?
Yeah.
Oh, so now I get to vote.
They don't have it.
Well, this is certainly simple
Okay,
enough.
we're
This is certainly
testing
simple
the
enough.
voting, new
Seriously?
voting system.
Yeah.
They have
Just
Okay.
pause
it?
Yeah.
After you
No,
use
don't pause
the
it. Just
first
let
vote,
them
and they give you back your ballot, well, it's not really a ballot, it's called an activation card. It'll show you the selections you picked to make sure that your selection, it'll tell you what you selected for each race. And then I'll take this card and I feed it through the scanner.
And it goes the same, so the scanner you use both things for,
The big
and,
one, the big ballot goes through here, the small ballot goes through
okay. And there'll be somebody posted by the scanner.
Oh, on top. Okay.
That's easy enough. Certainly it's simple.
Jen, is this set up to be used?
Yeah.
Okay, so.
Well, as long as you do it right, it's quick.
Is this a real database?
I worry about
the people that mark it wrong, or, you know, when it starts spitting them back out.
Then it says we want to vote on the paper. On election day, you really have to paper.
Yes,
Early voting is always. So then you put it out.
That's certainly simple enough, Mary Ann. It's simple enough, but it is good. The difference that we.
How are we going to tell people there's two different ways for, hey, if you vote early voting, you vote this way. If you wait and vote election day, you vote that way.
Got to do
You have
primary.
choice. You wait and vote election.
Do we send out
And
sample ballots?
especially since these machines are just
for
like
primary
the other
and
ones that
for
everybody hated and
gubernatorial?
had trouble with.
So
The early voting machines, this one,
we possibly have
and that's just like you did with the other
one on the gubernatorial primary one
furious.
and a different machine on the
We never had to vote on
gubernatorial.
that kind of machine again.
We can't. We have
We
money.
told them all.
It always comes back to that
Money,
thing, that
yeah.
money thing.
Yeah.
You know, kind of like what I used to tell my little brother about wanting Nikes. You know, I can get you Converse, I can get you Nikes.
Margaret, can we have, if the sample ballot goes out for early voters,
Yes, by law.
shouldn't we have a banner across the top that says early voters will use X machine?
Well, there'll be one at each.
Voting day.
That's what Allison was saying, that
The way
this
it's set up.
advertising agency, we're looking to them to try to give us some idea of how to market this concept.
Can you, the cover design?
You know, the thing is, we just got the cover design so that it's really simple
that are not used to having
to understand. Is it possible to dedicate one page to this ballot marking device for early voting? Yes.
We've told everybody.
But to say that we're going to have, you know, because people, we can't let people think that that long, slender, what is it, 4.5 months is going to be, look exactly with all of the names, otherwise they'll get, you know, they're going to walk out the door with their voting book, and they're going to say, well, all these names are missing.
Really cute shoes.
It's going to be
Being
new.
cute and sitting here admiring them. Margaret, I think that is an absolute fact. Allison just said, when people put their thing through here, they're going to walk off with them. We're going to have to make sure.
Well, I do plan on having people stationed by these.
Now, they're going to think they vote.
It's going to take election judges to talk to people.
Especially ones that have been.
Yeah, and the scanner is going to have to be,
It's going to be in the center of the room.
and maybe a big sign. And I don't know what it says. I have to think, but maybe a great big sign. Scan your vote here, or some
Ballot drop.
ballot drop. Yes, there you go. Mandatory ballot drop.
And see, we
have
pay
to- you have to
attention,
tell
but the
people
average
in
voter is
big,
not going to pay
bold,
attention.
absolute letters.
That's how come we've got to make sure that
They
Yeah.
haven't decided
Yeah,
yet. They're deciding on these kiosks right now. Whether they're going to get kiosks or what they're going to put in.
Oh, on the ballot marking device?
Yeah.
Yes, that's, yeah, that's under, yeah.
And then a sign as they go out the door. Did you scan your vote? Did you drop your ballot? Whatever the right words are.
Well, you know, we have, in theory, we're supposed to have somebody at the door that's going to give you your I voted today sticker, and that would be the perfect place.
So it's a 3-step process.
Yeah.
So we got to say step 1, step 2, step 3.
Step 1 on election day is you check in at the poll booth. Step 2 is you go get your ballot at a different station.
Right.
And step 3 is you go
And scan.
you vote your ballot and then scan it.
So that's 4 steps.
4 steps.
4 steps.
And people have been
primary-
told it's going to
We won't see.
People tend to think, with what they've been told, I have found out, that they're going to have a copy of the ballot to take home with them. When they said paper ballot, that they think they're going to have something to take home. So we're going to have to, the signage is going to have to be careful.
It's going to have to be careful here.
How many machines will we have at the early voting sites of these?
We have a minimum that the state, we'll have more than enough. We will have probably at least, what did I deploy? 178?
Yes.
178 in the last election. I'll probably have more. Probably, I'm looking at 200.
You're saying 200 divided by 9?
What's the name of that machine? Kind of.
Roughly. I mean, it's not all the same, I understand.
That's the PS.
Obviously, Silver Spring, Germantown, where we have.
Right. Right.
And you're going to have several scanners there too?
More there than let's
No,
say,
only one
the map.
scanner.
Well, that's what, and in the precincts, will you have more than one, you'll have a number of scanners at the early voting sites too?
The scanners, yes, we'll have more than, yes. Obviously, you know, I don't want lines, the board doesn't want lines at the scanners. So I'm talking about like someplace like Silver Spring, Germantown, 5 scanners.
Oh, really?
And, you know, Damascus, probably 2.
That's for early voting. But regular voting, you're not going to have.
You're going to have 1 and 2. I actually saw that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so
All right.
Going back to communications, are you done?
Yep.
Communications?
I'll just to sum up, I'll say obviously as the members of the board have just seen in the demonstration hands-on we've just done, that it is going to be a different experience that the voters are going to have, whether they use the early voting process or whether they use the election day process, one of which is geared more toward filling in the paper ballot and one of which is geared more toward using the touchscreen to mark the ballot. And if they use the touchscreen to mark the ballot, then that process is unfamiliar to the way that we've used touchscreens in the past. So there's a lot of discussion that's going to have to happen. We've begun to have some of that at the staff level. Now you all are having it at the board level as well.
Speaking of communication, it's just, I'm trying to think if I walked in, doesn't matter what I'm thinking. Can we have a handout as people walk in, maybe at the sign-in, that we hand people that is the 1, 2, 3, 4 you just talked about, with pictures and so they know, make sure you do, and then at this screen we have 1, and at that screen we have 2, and at the scanner we have 3 or whatever, that we have the numbers of the piece of paper we've handed them, so that there's this little confusion as thank you.
They can also read it while they're online.
There are certain regulations that have to be adhered to, and one of them is if you went to a polling place this last election, there was a poster that said, "How do you vote on the touchscreen?" And that was there. And so we'll have something. Obviously, we're going to have it multiple times at the
But
location.
if we had a handout to
Well,
people,
we obviously
that they had in their hot little hands.
Once
to say
we,
what-
and we can certainly look
I
at that.
agree.
Okay, thank you.
I'll carry that through this communications group to
Thank
the
you.
state personnel that are working with the
I-
admin.
It
I
should
think
be
I-
graphic rather than print.
Hand
Because
card.
people are not going to read. Maybe pictures of the machines, the different machines.
Hand card. Yeah,
And then-
just like I
and
did
then-
pictures for the 5 ways to
Right.
vote.
And then obviously whatever hand card we have, we also have to have available online for those who get their information that way.
Right. Okay, finally, the last report from the voting group, new voting system, is from election judges. They have met 3 times. They've identified regulations and software upgrades that they're going to need, that they've kicked over to the project management committee. And they are now in the process of beginning to create checklists and new signage with regards to prohibitions of electronic devices and other types of signs. So their scope of work is the election judge manual, the election judge curriculum, presentation materials, training evaluations, checklists, guides, forms, signs, and any new documents that they believe are needed. So that's what the various voting system groups have been working on. So you've seen the voting system. Like I said, the paper, I think we probably just used up all the paper that we had with the equipment. We are supposed to get paper this week. It said the 18th. I'll be happy if we get it the 19th. And we're also supposed to get the ballot, the bilingual in English demonstration ballot next week.
Wonderful. David?
Do we plan on doing a demonstration for the council on April 16th?
If you want me, if I have paper, that'd be helpful.
Um,
If I had a bilingual ballot.
I'll buy it myself. If,
Well,
special pay, I don't think we can.
I'll go
mean,
get it.
you know
I think
what?
it'd be really valuable for them
Okay.
to see how different this is from what we've done before.
Yes,
I will,
especially in the outreach
Yes,
and what's going to be needed.
Exactly. That's where
Yeah,
that's where,
I think it's
that's
a-
where I'm coming from. And I agree. We need a bilingual ballot because I'm sure it will be noted if we don't have.
Yes.
Oh, Nancy Farrell already saw the state's
Yeah.
English-only ballot.
No,
And as
but that's.
But, yeah, I'll call Amanda tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you.
And ask her if we can bring it all
Bring your dog and pony show.
Yeah.
Okay?
Wonderful.
That's it with regards to the new voting system, except, we didn't talk about that, though.
We don't have to go into executive session
Oh,
if
that's
they've
right.
already seen the. if they've
Okay,
seen the
I'm
minutes.
supposed to ask you to approve the executive session minutes from January that were sent out in advance.
I make the motion that we approve the executive board
Second.
session.
All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, the next meeting is April 20th. Is there anything else, Madam President?
I don't think so. We will be in touch on setting up a budget committee meeting. That's going to be very important for the council meeting. And
May I make a comment? I would like to thank our watchers and the staff for the marathon session, for
Yes.
staying.
absolutely,
hanging
I
with
haven't
us
gone
in
to
the marathon session.
yes, and staying, and I know some people come quite a distance. So thank you all very much. And we will be responding to the audit, and that'll get around to everybody. And I think
And it would be interesting if at the thing in June, we could have a session on problems other counties have had with MVA. Make them think about it a little bit.
May I suggest that anyone with suggestions for some breakout sessions other than what the couple that we've raised here, to get in touch sooner rather than later, like, right away this week with Allison, and, so that she can have that input and try to work her magic with Mayo. Otherwise, is there a motion to adjourn?
I move.
Second? Is there a second?
Second.
Nobody want to go
Oh,
home?
go.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye. Thank
Opposed?
you.
Thank you all very much.